In this video, I will be taking a look at the settings in the movie Lion, focusing on the relevance for the storyline and comparing them to the settings in 4 other movies. Lion tells the story of a young Indian boy who accidentally gets lost by jumping on the wrong train and is luckily adopted by a family in Australia. Given the lack of information about his origins, it is only several decades later that he starts putting memories together and is able to trace back to his biological family. Because this movie revolves around the bittersweet story of seeking the way back to the protagonist's childhood home, the settings play a key role in transmitting these emotions. Throughout the story, we're presented with many urban and natural landscapes from both India and Australia. As we see in these clips, there is a clear duality of contrast shown by images of the characters in similar settings located in both of these countries. There's a big presence of water, bridges, and railroads, very representative locations of both of the characters' hometowns. The combination of a very specific color palette, lighting, and framing create a magical atmosphere. Now let's take a look at these other movies that are also known for their highly powerful settings. I'm going to start with The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, the story of an introverted man with a big imagination but a boring office job. One day he is forced to go on an adventure completely out of his comfort zone, and once again we are presented with a contrast, in this case between the mediocre, grey-toned big city routine and the majestic natural landscapes of Iceland, Greenland, and the Himalaya. As opposed to the previous movie, here we're talking about a journey of self-discovery and liberation that is conveyed to us through these settings. Moving on to my next pick, Wild, we find ourselves with a young woman who decides to leave her troubled past back after the death of her mother. She packs her bag and starts hiking along the demanding Pacific Coast Trail in California. Despite every difficulty she has to overcome as a young and experienced female hiker, being alone in nature serves as a healing therapy, and the filmmakers successfully transmit that sense of calm and peace. Into the Wild has a considerable resemblance to this last movie as far as the story goes. However, in this case, the protagonist is a young college graduate who decides to distance himself from his comfortable upper-class life to discover the authenticity of a lifestyle that is more connected to nature. Even though the movie doesn't have what we would call a happy ending, the filmmakers beautifully transmit his feelings of joy and fulfillment discovering the wild landscapes of Alaska. In order to talk about a bit of a different type of genre, I decided to include The Revenant, which is another masterpiece when it comes to capturing landscapes. I could spend hours naming movies that have set up high standards when it comes to settings. Ultimately, the point here is that all these films share the fact that they have succeeded in adding value to the stories by not only developing a good narrative and good characters, but also by making them visually fascinating.